Today at the Radio Backyard Fence, she's back. Rosie's back. And I knew as soon as I saw the title of the article in a magazine I don't regularly read that we needed to talk about our topic today, which is The End of Reading is Here. Boy, that sounds ominous, doesn't it? Rosie and I both agree there was something prophetic about the article, and we're going to talk about it straight ahead on the program, From the Heart to the Heart for the Heart. Find out more links, the next book in our book club at the website chrisfabrylive.org. We thank our team behind the scenes, Ryan McConaughey doing all things technical. Trisha's our producer. Lisa's in the chair today. Josh will be answering your calls. And since it's Friday, that's right, it's time for the fabulous Fabry Friday Sigh. What does it do, Chris? I'll tell you. 1, we oxygenate your blood. 2, we get your endorphins going. 3, we raise your serotonin level. 4, we promote lymphatic drainage. And 5, we stimulate your parasympathetic system. That's why we call it the 5 lung languages. We also stimulate your vagus nerve. We help you release acetylcholine. And don't you dare forget what it does to cortisol dissipation. Take in 4 seconds of air through your nose right now. Hold it 4 seconds. And then, as you release that air through your mouth, push on the left side of your rib cage to get rid of all that bad carbon dioxide. Give a sigh today for serious works of literature that we don't read anymore because they're too long and too hard to understand, and if you do read them, good on you. Anything by the Count, Leo Tolstoy, including War and Peace and Anna Karenina. Dostoevsky, we say his name a lot, but do we read his writing? How about Victor Hugo? If you think The Hunchback of Notre Dame is about a football player, you need to listen to our program today. Charles Dickens, Is Bleak House Too Bleak? Is Great Expectations Too Much to Expect Us to Read? What is keeping us from diving deeply into the thoughts of those who've gone before? Today, on Chris Fabry Live. The fabulous Fabry Friday site brought to you by the Society to Preserve the Voice and Presence of Dr. Rosalie de Rosset, all rights reserved. This hour is going to fly by, Rosie. So quickly, I want to encourage you. You just got a copy of this book. Ryan gave you his copy. Do you have that 100-year?
I have it in front of me and just looked through it and saw so many familiar faces.
I know. It's so fun. We have, all this month, we've been talking about Moody Radio's 100th anniversary. And the book is This is Moody Radio, 100 Years of Proclaiming the Gospel. The faces, the voices, the people behind the scenes, the story of Moody Radio. It will fascinate young and old, and it's our thank you, but only one more week. July ends next Friday, and the book is going out the door. You can still get a copy of it, but not from us. So jump in the pool, give a one-time gift, sign up to become a Backfence partner if you'd like, give a monthly gift. Easiest way to do that's the website, chrisfabrylive.org, F-A-B-R-Y, chrisfabrylive.org. Let us send you this amazing history of 100 years of Moody Radio. You can also call our listener line, 866-953-2279, to give a gift. 866-95-FABRY. Oh, do this before next week, and you will thank me, I guarantee you. Don't you think, Rosie?
Yes, absolutely. Very important book. Very handsome
gorgeous.
book.
It is gorgeous, and it tells a story. All right, here she is, Dr. Rosalie de Rosset, retired professor of literature at Moody Bible Institute. She's got all these PhDs and rhetoric and all that kind of stuff. And featured resources, Unseduced and Unshaken, The Place of Dignity in a Woman's Choices. Rosie, you do have a connection with Moody Radio in the late 60s when you came here as a puppy, right?
It's a very young puppy, very frisky, actually. Yes, I came in 69, hired by radio, undeservedly. I didn't know anything. I had never written a script in my life, but they did hire. It was a different era. God knew what was going to happen, and I came in at $325 a month, except my father said, call him up and tell him that your father's a missionary and you need more. So I got $375 a month, which is very funny. And I knew a lot of those early people. I was there till 1975 when I got my master's degree in English and was hired by another divine and undeserved miracle as a faculty member at Moody Bible Institute, and the rest is history. But yes, I knew Bob Neff. I knew Chuck. I came under Chuck Christensen, who was later my chairman in the comm department. Lorene Keitel Strantz, who was my boss in continuity. We wrote live continuity. I knew Bill Pierce, I knew Chuck Wagner, I knew Ken Apple, I knew Stan Ferris was one of the funniest, cleverest people that ever, I think, came on earth.
So talented.
It was a kind of a real rambunctious time. I mean, people were strong voices, and they were just great. And so many more of the people that were on the air. I wrote more scripts. I wrote live radio. And I wrote more scripts on Peace, Love, and Joy than the world has ever dreamed of and than I ever want to do again.
Wait a minute. So when you say you wrote the scripts, what are you talking about?
I wrote scripts for Chuck Wagner late at night and for others that did late night. I can't remember, Music Through the Night or whatever it was. And then I wrote Continuity, which was Night Sounds, which was the links between shows. I also had a program in Spanish for a year, which I was told by the powers that by somebody who came in afterwards was a very bad program. I think he was completely right, because I had never learned Spanish. He didn't say it was a very bad program. He said it wasn't as great. I had never learned Spanish formally. I was born and raised in Peru. But it was interesting. I substituted for Lorene Keitel on Coffee Break, which was a woman's show. Ruth Dinwiddie is one of my very best friends. I've known her for 55 years. So I knew that whole early crew, and I remember the live productions of when you could choose a song and call it in, and they'd sing it right there in the studio.
Right.
I actually did edit tape for a little while. I knew Mike Kellogg, of course, also. I just knew them all. And it was kind of that old-time center of radio. Learned a lot about radio. In fact, I would count writing for radio as what cleaned up my prose to make me a better writer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember sitting at the manual typewriters. They were so heavy that you could have thrown them and they could have been weapons. They would have killed somebody if you could pick it up. And
I can remember getting the first, this was in the 80s, getting an I think it was IBM Selectric. Yes. And you could actually use the backspace key and it would erase whatever you had just written.
It blasted a little puff of white powder. Oh my, I thought it was practically sent from above.
Magic.
Yeah,
magic. Just magic.
Yes,
and we had no idea. We had no idea what was ahead for us. Okay, that is a great reason for people to get a copy of this book, because it's our thank you this month. This is Moody Radio, 100 Years Proclaiming the Gospel. I don't think your picture is in here, Rosie, but it needs to be in there.
They have no idea that I was there. Oh, the other thing was the fights between Dr. Paul Little and Aunt Teresa. They were friendly, but they went after each other with a vengeance. It was hysterical. Really? Pastor Little, his desk was piled like high. And Aunt Teresa would go after him, and he'd say, a clean desk is a sign of a bad mind, or, they were just funny. Aunt Teresa's a very strong character.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And single. Wasn't she single?
She was single.
Her whole life?
She was single her whole life, and she had a friend who had a tremendous amount of money, had inherited, who asked her to come and live with her in her, in the last years. And
wow.
Yeah. She was a very interesting character.
Jim
Wick's another one, yeah.
Yeah, Jim said that he produced for, and he called her Terry. I produced for Terry toward the end of her reign there at the KYB, yeah.
I just saw Jim Wick last Saturday at his granddaughter's wedding.
Right.
I hadn't seen him in years and years.
This feels like old home week.
Yeah.
This is so much. We could just do this all hour, Rosie.
We could.
But you and I read an article in The Atlantic magazine, and I don't subscribe and I don't read The Atlantic, but when I saw the title of this, I thought, I got to read that. It's by Rose Horowitz. And let's set this up by playing something from PBS NewsHour. The senior arts correspondent, Jeffrey Brown, talked with Rose Horowitz, who's on the Atlantic staff, and she wrote this article about the end of reading is here. Here's what she said.
What I meant by the age of reading was that this is bigger than what the statistics are showing us, that what is really going away is a time when reading was a major way that people transmitted, culture, information, news, and really derived meaning from text. And, my piece is arguing that that's ending and that we're entering what I call a post-literate age.
And as you remind us at the beginning of this essay, this age of reading, which many of us have been so immersed in for so long, it actually doesn't have that long a history.
Yes. Well, so, I think we think of reading as kind of something that's innate or inevitable, but actually it's quite historically contingent. Reading first emerged 6,000 years ago, and it was only relatively recently that, large numbers of people could read and that people spent a lot of time pleasure reading. So this is something that is kind of new. And when this age started, it really transformed society and the way people thought and the way politics and culture worked. And as it's going away now, I think we're seeing changes of the same magnitude in our society.
Now, you referred to what we're entering as a post-literate age, and there's been plenty of discussion, of course, about social media, short videos on TikTok and elsewhere, and you're arguing that we are reading differently already. So what do you mean by a post-literate age?
If we look at the statistics, people still know how to read. The literacy rate is actually historically very high. And, in many ways, we're probably reading more words than ever. If you think about the number of emails and text messages and social media posts you're reading, we're inundated with words and we're surrounded with them. But what's happening is that this kind of these number of words that we're swimming in has made it so that it's almost so difficult to focus on, any serious or complex work of literature for an extended period of time. And so it's not a crisis of literacy, it's that we are entering a post-literate age.
So that's Rose Horowitz from The Atlantic magazine talking with Jeffrey Brown of the PBS NewsHour. And I want to come back with Rosie and talk about that article, The End of Reading is Here, because we both felt like there's something prophetic about it, and not only for the broader culture or for our own hearts, but also the church. So that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the hour. If you go to chrisfabrylive.org, we have a link to that article, chrisfabrylive.org. Dr. Rosalie de Rosset is with us today at the Radio Backyard Fence. We're talking about an article, but we're also talking about what is in the article, what Rose Horowitz, whose voice you just heard, is saying in The End of Reading is Here. The subtitle from The Atlantic is Optimists once believed that universal literacy was inevitable. Now it seems that the age of reading might be a short anomaly in human history. And we're going to talk about that and why it's important to us and the church as well. And if you ever want to jump in, 877-548-3675. I thought this was a really well-written, 8,000 or 9,000 word piece that hit a number of things that I have been thinking for a long time, and she was able to put it into words. What did you think, Rosie?
Oh, I thought it was just really prophetic and in ways that the pulpit should be, in ways that the Christian magazine should be. This has particular resonance. It should have particular resonance and prophetic value for the Christian. We do inhabit two worlds at a time. We do know the Lord. We are word-based. And I do not hear that coming from churches. I'm very glad that my church does not project words onto a screen. I'm not completely panning that because at my age, I see it better. But mine is still text-based in a bulletin. And my preacher does not preach off, and I think everybody knows how I feel about this, off a screen, which I find terribly distracting. He preaches out of the Bible. But we need to understand, every parent listening to me, every church leader listening to me needs to understand that part of their obligation in what they do in running Sunday schools and teaching Sunday schools and being part of the church is to emphasize the power of reading, or nobody will be able to read the sacred text well.
Yes. Okay, can I jump in real
yes.
quick? On Sundays, our pastor will say, get out your Bibles, get out your device, whatever, and I'll get out my Bible. and I realize I've got to hold it up higher than the row before me in order to get enough light to be able to see, because the light is dim so that you can see the screen.
Wow.
And so, and that's not, a knock. Most devices are backlit now. You can see it easily. But if you're reading an actual book in a dark room, it's very difficult to do that, especially when you get older, like yours truly. Okay, go, Rosie.
Yes, no, and I am admittedly, has-been, I suppose, but I'm not a has-been. I have taught for 6 decades, and I have still found that the word catches young people's minds. And there are problems of different kinds with every decade. But when you introduce them to the solid reading word of a novel, it changes lives. And I've got enough testimonies I could talk about that even in the last class I taught, how people came to me and said, I've never been a reader. I had a guy that had spent a lot of time in prison, had no background whatsoever, and he was so caught by the literature that he wants to just continue reading more and more. Why is this not being emphasized from the pulpit? Why don't people talk about reading, about how can you read these difficult texts that are metaphorical, that are, narratively complex, if you are completely sold out to a screen? And I think she says so many good things. She says, reading shaped the modern mind. We're now postmodern, so that's before. Its disappearance will reshape it. And then she asserts, based on research, literally reading a word changes your brain for a few hours at least. And if you know how to measure it right, for much longer than that. If we fill our time with short-form videos instead of books, our reading skills atrophy. I'm at that age where I know that I have to work on my core. I'm not going to be walking down the steps, and I got steps to walk down. You atrophy. Things that are unused atrophy. And reading books is a wonderful workout for the attention span. Yesterday, I was walking somewhere, and there was a young man standing at a table. There was absolutely nothing in his face. There was nothing. It was a face that was empty. I wanted to weep. And I spoke, and there was still empty. There is a kind of vacuity, even in our good Christian young people, a vacuousness in the ways in which they make their decisions. I had dinner the other day with a former professor of mine who's a much older man, and he's a tremendously well-read, and he is trying to reach his grandchildren, and he said he cannot reach them. He had written them, one of them, a graduation letter that was published in Notre Dame magazine, and Notre Dame is not just a football team. It was the magazine, and it was the most stunning letter, and he had told her he would give her the most expensive computer if she would just read it and interact with him in a circular conversation. He said people don't know how to converse circularly, where you pick up a piece and continue on. And of course, he's never heard from her, and he knew that would happen. He bought her the computer anyway. And he has written a piece, which I've asked him to send to me, and he hasn't yet, healed by reading. And when I hear that, I think, I measure my life by books. I can think of 4 or 5 in my 20s that turned me around in the way I loved, in the way I judged, in my spirit, things that absolutely emptied me. They cut into me and changed things. And what she continues to say, and she has many, many good things to say, she says that the brain associated with imagination is used about half as much as when looking at static illustrations or listening to an audio recording. Even listening to books on audio does not engage the imagination the way reading a book does. And I'm totally in favor of audio listening. I don't have any problem with that. And children also use their cerebellum, a part of the brain associated with learning, less when watching a video. They don't really have to use their imagination as much because things are happening on the screen. The ramifications of not using your imagination well are so far-reaching, it would take 2 or 3 shows to talk about it. It's what Lewis said, we need to water the imagination. If it is starved, it will go to the bad things. It will go to what the screen offers.
Can I just say, your friend who wrote his granddaughter and offered to buy a computer, have him write me a letter. I need a car. I'll write him back.
I will talk to to him about that.
Actually, I need the car that I have fixed. But I say that in jest, but healed by reading, that says so much.
Isn't that beautiful?
Here's something else. She quotes Marianne Wolf, a cognitive neuroscientist at UCLA. She argues that people are losing the ability to think deeply about writing. That doesn't mean they are forgetting how to decode individual words. Rather, they are losing the higher order abilities of comprehension and synthesis. America, in other words, is not illiterate, it's post-literate. And she says things are about to get worse and fast. And that sounds like doom and gloom. But what she's putting her finger on the nerve of is what we have seen the society baked in with all of the internet and social media and all of that. This is what is the byproduct of that, don't you think?
Oh, the comprehension thing and the ability to analyze and what AI is going to do. I had the experience just lately. I don't know how to turn off the stupid AI button on my computer. I've got a new computer because they're going to throw me out of here with my computer. Anyway, I must have hit something. I have no idea. It rewrote my letter. I was so angry. And of course, it made it this generic kind of parlor type writing. Well, now they say kids are hitting AI to synthesize things, and they're sometimes angry at their professors for demanding the whole book. Now, there is in some measure,
Yes.
I'm sure you all know that partial books are being required now instead of whole works, which is such a corruption of learning and education. I think there's a little bit of a return to that and to getting rid of the cell phone in the classroom. Right. But this semester, I had 2 or 3 students that only read 10% of the material. And that's going to be showing up more and more. I mean, I'm not going to be teaching anymore, but most of the students read most of the material. I have to tell you that. But if they want to go to a summary. That is like looking at the ingredients of a recipe when it's uncooked. And there is no savor. I mean, what I feel about books, Richard Wright, the great 20th century Black writer who wrote a very famous book called Black Boy, said, I hungered for books, new ways of looking and seeing. It was not a matter of believing or disbelieving what I read, but of feeling something new, of being affected by something that made the world look different. And he says this about reading Mencken's A Book of Prefaces. He says, the mood of the book would not die. It lingered, coloring everything I saw, heard, and did. I finally knew what white men were feeling. Now, the thing I want to say about that is I have always argued that during Black Awareness Month, February, instead of issuing polemics, we need to read to our audiences, to the chapels here, the poetry of the greatest Black writers. Excerpts from some of their greatest short stories. We need to read Lawrence Dunbar. We need to read Alice Walker. We need to make that an exercise in understanding. If I can remember when male students in an almost all male class read The Yellow Wallpaper and a couple of what are termed feminist short stories, they're just understanding women's stories. And they said, I never knew that before. And this is what you can't get with a summary. I can't even tell you, I have been purging my books, hundreds of them, because I'm at that stage of life. And I'm stopped all the time by an inscription by my grandfather, who only had a high school education, but who put the name and the price of every book. He had a rich theological library, by a leather-bound volume from my grandmother, by something from my brothers that they loved and sent to me. Books everywhere that charmed me, delighted me, changed me, got in the sinew of my the warp and woof of my life. My library that's the part. That is the horrible part of I'm doing this cutting away of my entire life, saving what is essential that I can't live without at the moment.
And I think in this sense, what you've just done, the passion that you have for this topic, the passion that you have for thinking deeply, for delight, this is what you're talking about with reading and the process of reading, that is something that you have to hold up to other people and show them how good it is, because it's so much easier to fill their life with the TikTok and the clips and all those kinds of things. And you know, they're so alluring, they're so easy, but they detach us, our attention spans, and they dumb us down. As you know, I remember Dr. Foos, Harold Foos, who taught at Moody for many years. He always had a book in his hand. He always had something that, you know, if we had something in class, we were doing a test, he'd always have a book right there to be reading in front of the class. And I thought, wonder why he reads why he reads that much. And then it dawned on me, is like, the reason why he's good at teaching is because he thinks deeply, because he reads deeply. And so part of what I want to do with the conversation here, and then with the book club, Rosie, that we've revamped here. We did the first book club in June, and we were going to have the second book club in September, and I'm almost feeling like that's too long to wait. I want to do this in August. So let me come back. We'll talk about the book that we're going to be reading, and if you want to ask a question or make a comment on our subject matter today with Rosalie de Rosset, just call 877-548-3675. The end of reading is here, is the article in The Atlantic. Is Rose right? More straight ahead. It's always fun to have Dr. Rosalie de Rosset with us at the Radio Backyard Fence. And I've been thinking about this topic ever since I saw this article came out in The Atlantic. The end of reading is here. The age of reading is gone. And what does that mean? Reading the article, I've been thinking, okay, so how do we not go gently into that good night? How do we push back against, you know, the way that the culture is going, and shed a little light on the delight that comes from, I remember Rosie saying on the air, losing yourself in a good book. You know, it's raining outside. I'm going to lose myself in this book. And someone writing and say, I've never heard that before. I never thought about that before, losing yourself in a book. And it's like, no, that's one of the great wonders of our minds, is that we can take these scribbles on a page and we can understand what somebody 100 or 200 or 500 years ago was thinking at that time and how it relates to me. So we decided to revamp the book club, Rosie's book club, that you started, I think it was like 21 years ago, on Midday Connection. And in June, we read, what was the book that we read in June? I can't remember.
Shane.
By
Jack
Of course, Shane. We read Shane, and we did that. And then people were saying, well, when's the next one? It was like September, because we wanted to do it quarterly. And now here in the middle of July, or toward the end of July, I'm thinking, it's too long. I want another book. So the next book club we're going to do this in August. That's okay with you, Rosie?
Perfectly okay.
Okay. All right. So we're going to do The Wise Woman by George MacDonald. And people say, so how do I have to get a decoder pin in order to? No, just get the book, read the book by the time we have the club, the show, and you be a part of that and see what it does inside you and respond on that day. And if you can't, you can listen to the on the website and to the podcast. But Rosie, I think this is one way to help people get an idea of what reading can do, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we've started with short books. We've started with Shane, great classic, but small. The Wise Woman, tremendous theological classic, even though it is a young adult. Even younger, but just beautiful. And we're not going to probably ever do the Brothers Karamazov. I just want to let you know that. But we'll keep building and read it with attention. Read it. Don't look at summaries. Read the book and think about it, and give yourself to text. I not only lose myself in reading, but I find myself in reading. And I think the losing myself is because I'm finding myself, but it's from an indirect way that doesn't feel as threatening. You can make the application and know who you are better. And
I want to play your voice from 21 years ago. I think it was '05 or '06. It may have been later than that. But you were on Midday Connection, and Anita Lustria was reading a response. And this, it's about a minute long. But this kind of encapsulates what you want to do with the book club, but also the response to the end of reading is here that we're talking about today. Let's go back, get in the Wayback Machine. Here we go.
Well, imagine if you have entertained an illusion, say, about what you're like or who you're going to marry or the person you are married to or a preacher or another person, you have never let any reality come into the midst of it, even though you've been warned, and all of a sudden it fails you. You're not going to immediately adjust.
Right.
And it has happened?
And you're devastated.
You're absolutely
because of
devastated.
Holding to that illusion. We see that with Pip.
Yeah.
This email that came in from Shannon, which I thought was wonderful. She went on to say, this was a long book. I thought I'd never get finished. It took a while to understand Dickens' strange and rambling sentence structure. But when I did finish, I realized I still had 2 months before the radio discussion, so I decided to attack Les Miserables.
That's really good.
And she said, this is something I never would have attempted a few years ago, but thanks to the encouragement from the book club, I finished that too. And I can't believe I've wasted so many years reading fluff when these beautiful characters were waiting to be read. It's like I was eating marshmallows not knowing there was a free steak dinner down the road.
Absolutely. And this is what I have been saying and arguing, how enriching that is to our lives. It's really kind of a matter of intellectual life and death.
And I knew you would love this email. This is from Shannon, and I thought that was great. She goes, thanks for encouraging us to aim higher.
And go deeper. Yeah. And to lose yourself and find yourself in a story. I just finished, and I'm not bragging here because I read it on audio. It was 34 hours. I never read Anna Karenina. And I got to the end of it, and I'm trying not to spoil it here, but the character of Levin, who's been an agnostic or an atheist, he's pushed God away for such a long time, begins to formulate something different, looking at his son and feeling something come alive in him. And it's like, if I had not gone all the way through and the despair of Anna and the train and all that, if I'd not gone all the way through that and seen Levin watching this all transpire, I don't know that I would have gotten, that to go all the way through that for what Tolstoy did. It was hard. It was hard to keep the characters in there, but it was so worth it.
Huh.
What do you think?
Yes,
about that?
This is what I think. There is nothing about this that is negative. What we are saying to you, don't cheat yourself. Don't lead a thin life. When there is this rich, rich gift by gifted authors, Christian or non-Christian, because gifts are always from God. Don't go to the new thing as influencers, and some of them don't have two brains to rub together. They just want to be part of the elite. They just want to have a podcast. Don't do the thin thing when the gorgeous thing, the piece of steak is there. It will take a little adjustment. That's why we're leading you into Shane and the wise woman and taking you up. But your life will fill up in ways that you never could have imagined. And you will be influenced by the voice of God. I mean, behind anything beautiful or anything revealing or anything astonishing is always God, because he is the author of good things. I have this quote that I just found. It said, it's from the Chronicles of Narnia, the magician's nephew, for the rest of that day, whenever he looked at the things about him and saw how ordinary and unmagical they were, he hardly dared to hope. But when he remembered the face of Aslan, he did hope. When we see the face of God, when we see the gifts of God, when we see these things that he has given us to enjoy, to stir our spirits in ways perhaps we haven't even felt them stirred, we are seeing the face of God, and in that there is hope.
And in that is also the idea of digging into the scriptures. And not to say, the Bible is literature, but it's not the same kind of literature as literature is. There's something it's God breathed. But if I depend on a John MacArthur commentary or any good or bad commentary to tell me what I'm reading, to explain everything to me without me engaging in, for example, the Psalms, to engage those deeply myself, then and I don't know Hebrew. I don't know in the New Testament. I don't know Koine Greek. So it's helpful to know that this word means that, and here's the derivation of it. But for me to engage in the text and ask God, what are you saying here? And what are you saying to me right now in the situation that I'm in and the decisions that I'm making? That's what you're talking about, right?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And honestly, do not ignore the Gospels and the narratives of Scripture. Reach out and grip you when you read them carefully. Be gripped by Jesus in a new way by reading the Gospels. He's really quite unpredictable. He isn't anything like, and I've said this before on the air, probably during sharing, good hair, blue towel over the arm, stalking around, a guy that would never date a girl like me, as one of my students said. Nothing like that. He's surprising. He's loving. I now, just even in the last couple of years, have come to totally feel the grace in the face of Christ and his closeness to me. And I'm a piece of work.
Why? Why just recently?
Well, I've always had little shreds of it, but there is something about the last couple of years of teaching when I've taught these novels. Christ has just come so close to me. And God is still sometimes a little hard, and the Holy Spirit, as we know, is always complex. But there is something about Christ. I really believe in his love for me because his stories make absolutely clear, as abetted by the great novels I've read that show him images of Christ.
That's Rosie de Rosset. Dr. de Rosset's book club is coming back in August. We're going to pick a date, so it's just a few weeks away. The new book is George MacDonald's The Wise Woman. Again, this is a short work. It's something that you get at the library. You may be able to get it online as well. The Wise Woman. Find that, read that, be a part of the book club, get into the text yourself, make notes, ask questions, and then join us. We'll let you know when we're going to do the book club. We're going to do it in September, but we're actually going to move it up to August and continue that way. More with Rosie straight ahead on Moody Radio. Our remaining moments with Dr. Rosalie de Rosset. Today at the Radio Backyard Fence, we've been talking about this article that was in The Atlantic, written by Rose Horowitz. The end of reading is here, and we have a link to that at chrisfabrylive.org. You get a certain amount of it, and then you hit the paywall, so just know that. But there was one part in the article that really spoke to me, and that was, and I go back to the hymns, here I lay my the word Ebenezer.
Yeah.
It's like we don't want to sing that because nobody knows what it is. Well, tell us what it is. Enlighten me and tell me what an Ebenezer is. It's a stone of remembrance,
Yeah.
And so I have been reading the Spurgeon's Look at the Psalms, the whole Look at the Psalms. Mm-hmm. It's from Crossway, edited by Alistair McGrath and J.I. Packer, who just turned 100 this week.
Oh, my stars.
He passed away, but he would be 100 this week. And in Psalm 26, I got to this place, the word approbation. Approbation, approbation. Approbation. What does approbation mean? And one of the things that Rose talks about in the article is that these college students weren't able to look at the sentence or look at the context of a word and figure out what it might mean. Well, it could be this, could be that. And the sentence is, what a comfort it is to have the approbation of one's own conscience. That's from Charles Haddon Spurgeon. And I thought, what is approbation? The approbation of one's own conscience. So I looked it up. And it means approval or praise. Approbation. The opera met with high approbation. So he's saying what a comfort it is to have the approval or the praise of one's own conscience, as he's looking at this verse in Psalm 26. So, to read some of these older works and to encounter a word that you've never seen before or you don't know what the meaning is, that will lead you to something good, don't you think?
Oh, yes. There are two ways to look at this. I was reading classics by the time I was young, not because I was so brilliant, just the way my mother raised me. And I have a niece that read Tolkien by the time she was about 6. So she had 2 academic parents. And when she was reading along, nobody told her to write down all the big vocabulary words. You have to go where you are. So there's a time sometimes to just read for the delight and to read through it and maybe make a check mark by it. One of the things I do is I make check marks by passages in books, and then at the end of the book, I write down the page number that I did it. Or I would stop and just write the word down if you don't want to interrupt yourself for later to come back to, or just look it up quickly. I mean, it's so easily looked up today, and see what it adds to it. More than often, it will just be a word that you do really know, but it's just done in a different form. It's an educational thing.
So there is you prime the pump with these great works.
Yeah.
You hunger for more, and that's the same with Bible reading. When you start to read the Bible and you read it every day, you start to want more of it. And you see how it fits in together, Old and New Testaments, and Paul writing and what Peter is saying. And so there is you prime the pump for wanting more, and then there is stamina that you get from reading these great works of literature, so that I think one of the things you wanted to say here before we end is there is this awakening in us. Talk about that.
Oh, reading wakes you up. I have 1,000 testimonies from my students about how I just couldn't believe what this said. I couldn't believe or a classic article I give them to read. I couldn't believe what that made me think about, how that put in front of me one of the books. We should probably read it in the book club, Too Late to Fall Out by Alan Paton, that I taught for 45 years in English. It made men just become completely aware of secret sin in the most incredible of ways, but it gave them hope about communication. And one of the things, how much does what we're reading, I mean, when we're social media driven, or TikTok, God help us, or all those things that are, or even the influencers, some of them who don't have the education God gave a goat, don't wake up. They're not waking us up because they don't know more than we do. They just are flashier. And you need to take an inventory of the books that you do like, and be honest. I can tell you books that I'm not terribly proud of that I've liked, that you like, or books that you dislike because you just haven't understood them. And please know that there are books, you don't have to like every classic. There are things I do not like that are classic. I know it's my problem, and it's okay. I'm not going there. I just don't have that much time in my life. But how do you expect to? Do you want to be enlarged? And especially as a Christian, do you want your life to get deeper and fuller, to know people more, to know yourself more? And good reading is this wonderful way of a process of enlargement. And it becomes such fun. I hate it when I don't have a good book that I'm being lost and found in.
Yes. Well, and the empathy quotient here,
the
too.
empathy quotient.
When you start to read, and the quote from Midday with Anita and you were reading Great Expectations back then, and you've got Pip, and you got Miss Haversham, and when you begin to understand the backstory of Miss Haversham and what happened to her and why she's in that house and why that cake is, that old cake is there on the table, then you start to have empathy for her where you just hated her before, right?
That's right. And then you see somebody, this has happened to me, where you see somebody older who seems to be so shut down, and you always know there's an unbelievable reason for that, or a young person that's completely shut down who's really irritating. And then you begin to find out there's always a backstory. There's always a backstory.
Do you know the word sonder? S-O-N-D-E-R.
No, I don't.
Okay, S-O-N-D-E-R. And maybe I should just not even define it here for people so that everybody will go look it up. But the definition of sonder is it describes the awareness that other people have their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences, their own inner lives, and which are as rich and detailed as your own, even though they may appear as background figures in your daily life. So that person that you have gone, and this was John Koenig, who talked about this back, 10 or 15 years ago. What he said was, we are all our own main characters of our own lives. And everybody else is a supporting character, and there's some are bigger characters and stuff. But that person that you just checked you out at the grocery store, they have their own life, and they are the main character in their life. So Sonder is this realization that, other people have their own stories, and I'm a minor character in their stories. That realization, that coming to yourself, that you understand how this all kind of works together.
That's really wonderful. I've never heard that.
I hadn't either until I encountered it the other day. But I bring it up here because it's true. When you get into fiction, when you start reading these great stories of the past, and even good fiction that's written today, that enlivens you, as you said, it awakens you, and it also connects you with the people around you rather than distancing yourself. Because isn't that what social media does? Isn't that what the internet does? It feels like we're connecting, but we're really not.
We're distancing.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, there's a lot of passion in here, Rosie. I love it when you come along. Thank you for doing this today and for reading that article and kind of taking us through it, agreeing. There's some parts that you didn't agree with, but we won't get into that today.
No.
But if you want to read the article, we've got a link to it. It's from The Atlantic by Rose Horowitz. You can find it at chrisfabrylive.org. The switch that we have made, even today, in June we said we're coming back in September, we're going to read The Wise Woman by George MacDonald. And we're going to switch that to August because I just feel like we can't wait until September to do this. We got to do this in August. So we'll go like every 2 months. And that means Too Late, the Foul Rope is going to be down the road. We'll have to do something in December, too, for around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a Christmas Carol or something along those lines.
Right.
But, Rosie, keep being who you are, friend, and you come back and see us, okay?
Thank you. Great pleasure to be here.
Dr. Rosalie de Rosset, you can find out more about her, and our featured resource today is her book, Unseduced and Unshaken, The Place of Dignity in a Woman's Choices. Have a great weekend. Read some good books. Read your Bible, too. And come on back Monday for a conversation about rest and sleep on Chris Fabry Live, production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute, online, chrisfabrylive.org.